In today's video, we're going to be working on a fridge, and the issue that we're having is the fridge or the freezer is not cooling. Right now I have my multimeter. I connected my temp probe inside. I let it sit there for a few minutes and I could see that it's basically 61 degrees. It really hasn't fluctuated at all. It goes to 61 to 62, so it really hasn't changed at all. And so at this point, my concern is, as I've been standing here and listening, I haven't heard the compressor turn on, and I don't hear the evaporative fan turning on either. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to just diagnose it and see if we can trace it back. What we're going to do right now is we're going to unplug the fridge, and then we're going to plug the fridge back in. Now the reason I'm doing that is I'm trying to almost reset the system, and what I want to do is I'm going to stand and I'm going to listen for the compressor and the evaporative fan to kick in. And if one or two doesn't turn on, then I'll know from that point where to proceed in our diagnosis of the fridge. So right now we're going to unplug the fridge and let's listen and see what happens. The evaporative coil will try to turn on, the fan motor will try to turn on, and then the compressor will try to turn on. That's the compressor turning on. So right now I'm going to give it a couple of minutes and see what happens, if there's any change in the system. A lot of these newer fridges, before they actually start to run, they don't turn on right away like the older models. They actually go through a check and balance. What I did right now was I opened up the freezer door and I could hear right now, if you listen to that crackling, that is actually your evaporative coil starting to freeze up, and I don't hear my evaporator fan kicking in. So right now at this point I've at least isolated it to the evaporative fan motor. I hear the compressor, but I also hear the crackling. When your coil starts to freeze up, it starts to make crackling noises. So I know right now we're gonna at least take a look at the evaporative fan motor. Remove your ice tray. We're going to remove the shelving. A lot of these newer fridges have a clip on the side of the shelf. Sometimes it's clear or white or black, and basically that kind of secures it from accidentally popping out. So what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to remove that clip, and then you're gonna remove the shelf. And basically what you're doing is you're pushing towards the ice maker, and then you're pulling out. Now here we have two screws that secure the ice maker. Just loosen those screws enough so that you can actually push up the ice maker and pull it out. Before you start working on the electrical, unplug your fridge. Once you loosen those two screws, go ahead and push the ice maker up and it'll pop out. Now on your ice maker harness, you have this little plastic cover that protects the actual ports. What you're going to do is, you can see that clip on top. That clip basically inserts when you push it in. What you're going to do is you're going to squeeze both the top and the bottom, and then you're going to pull it out, and you're just basically squeezing it enough for those clips to actually come out from behind this panel. Now to disconnect the ice maker, you have clips on the top and the bottom. You're basically going to squeeze that and you're going to pull, and that will allow you to remove your ice maker. Go ahead and remove your two screws. When you remove your back panel, what you're going to do is you're going to slowly and gently lift up and out towards you. You have to make sure at the same time that you're able to bypass this little water spout that pours the water into your ice maker. And there's going to be a lot of electrical components back there, so don't be too abrasive. Just take your time and be as careful and gentle as possible. Now once you pull the panel, there's going to be electrical wires connected. So what you want to do is you'll want to disconnect your harness that ties in to the back of the fridge. So here I disconnected the fan motor. And what I've done is I basically checked the wiring that goes from my fan to my harness. So the red one goes to this lead right here, and then the blue one actually goes here to my ice maker and comes back down, and they both tie into this blue lead. So basically all I'm doing is I'm checking to make sure how this goes in. You can see here, this is how my harness sits in. And I'm basically looking at the bottom two prongs, and I'm gonna take my leads from my multimeter and I'm gonna see if I have 120 volts coming through. Now what I'm doing is I'm holding my leads inside those two terminals where I trace the wires back from my fan motor, and you can see here that I do have 120 volts coming in. So at this point we do know that we do have a faulty evaporative fan motor. Now I've plugged my harness back in, and you can see here that my fan motor is not turning on. So at this point I do know that the fan motor does need to be replaced. Now I'll show you how to replace your fan motor. Now understand that the fridges, as they become more dependent on electrical controls, they're starting to make it more difficult as far as diagnosing. You see they constantly change their schematics and their components. So this is the same fridge. This is a 2-month-old model, and this is their newer model. And even though it's 2 months, you can see here that previously you were able just to remove the fan and then replace it, where here they're adding a lot more electrical components. So this ties into your ice maker line, then ties into this harness. I'll show you how to remove it, but as I said, it really varies and depends on your particular model. So here we have 2 rings, and basically you're going to take these rings and you're going to slowly shift it and position it so that it's in the up-down position. You're basically just taking your screwdriver and you're moving it with your screwdriver. Again, be careful, these are plastic and the ring is metal. So you can see here, all I've done is I straightened it out. With your screwdriver, you're going to push it down and you're going to basically just flip it over. Once you do that, this will allow you to actually push up on the panel that covers your fan, and then it'll pull out the 2 screws that secure your fan. At this point, you just have your little inserts, and you're basically going to push those tabs in, and that will allow you to remove the entire fan. If you have this model, at this point you'll just remove it and put the new one and then reassemble it. You have this model, which you have the harness that ties into your ice maker. You're basically going to have to remove this clip and then take out the fan and then reassemble everything together. Go ahead and put in your new fan motor and fasten the 2 screws. Reattach your face cover. Go ahead and put your clips back on. Reattach your harness. Also, make sure for your ice maker that if your ground becomes disconnected, that you put it back on to the clip. Now we're going to put the panel back on. Just remember, as you're working on it, you may hit the spout for your ice maker. So what I do is I just take a long screwdriver as I'm working on it. I'll stick it through and then kind of just work on it to make sure I get it right into the center. Reattach your screws to the back of the panel. Now I'm going to plug the fridge back in, and I just want to see to ensure everything is working properly. As I said, it's going through a check and balance, so I can hear the fan motor turn on. I can feel the air blowing through. Now we're going to hear the compressor turn on. And now you're going to close your fridge. You're going to wait a couple of minutes. It'll take a couple of minutes for it to go through the checks and balance, and then the fridge should turn on. It did take a few minutes to kick on. As I said, anywhere from 6 to 10 minutes I've seen it happen. While I was waiting for it to kick on, I basically assembled everything, put my ice maker back in, connected it, put my shelf back in, and actually just sat here and waited. And right now you can hear that it is running. You can feel the air coming out through the sides. And what I'll do is I'll just leave my multimeter here, put my temp probe inside, and just let it cool down. I've been here for about 45 minutes, and you can see here that it is coming out at 18 degrees. The fan motor is still running. The fan motor is still running, and it is nice and cold inside of here. If this video was a help or informational, please subscribe.